Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Ho, ho, ho. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. I am Ray Flowers of FG. Not quite Christmas, but it's pretty darn close. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, all that stuff. Everyone have a safe and happy holiday season. Stay out of trouble, have a good time, and do your best to enjoy it. Family is important. Friends are important. I know all of us, including myself, we get tied up in work sometimes, and things that aren't super important end up becoming more important than they should be. So, family and friends, enjoy it while you've got it with you. Because you never know when they might not be around. Ray Flowers again of FG. You can follow me on Twitter, X, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, all those places at the Ray Flowers. You can find me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesdays, I'm on the Elite Sports Show with Jeff Manns on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. So that show is 3 to 6 Eastern, Monday through Friday. This show is 12 to 1 Eastern, Monday through Friday. Obviously, as I said yesterday, I'll repeat, we're having a little bit of a different schedule this week. Obviously, I'm here today, Christmas Eve. I hope everyone is enjoying the show here. Hopefully, we'll give you a little bit of information here to help out in championship week for most of you in fantasy football. There will be no show on Christmas. We'll be back on Thursday. There'll also be no SiriusXM show for Ray on Wednesday either. So get a day off. Jeff Mann's taking the day off too. So unfortunately, the NFL, as we talked about yesterday, doesn't care about player safety, doesn't care about the competitive balance of the game, doesn't care about us, the fantasy players. They're just playing every day. Including on Wednesday. But we'll be back on Thursday. We'll review the Wednesday football action and then do a normal Thursday. Thursday, we'll talk with Tyler Beaker, and Friday, we will talk with Russell Clay. Just to say it, as you're all aware, I'm sure by now, the rankings have been updated at FantasyGuru.com. Just to put it out there, the matchups aren't correct right now. Why is that? We get our matchups from the third-party provider. Sometimes the provider takes a while to roll things over. I don't know why that is. It should be instantaneous. It should happen at 12:01 Tuesday. Doesn't. But the rankings have been updated at FantasyGuru.com. I'm not going to be here I'm only working about a half day today, and then I'm out. I'll have my matchup article out. I'll have the Wednesdays and Thursday matchups available. Probably Thursday night, Friday morning, I'll get the rest of the games available. That 14,000, 12,000, whatever word article it is every week. I'll have Wednesday's games and Thursday's games available. Today, I'll be out most of the afternoon. I won't do anything tomorrow. Christmas is the only day of the year I don't work. So check the rankings over at FantasyGuru.com. Those will be your guide for setting those lineups here early in the week. Already seen some questions this morning. People saying, what do we do? What do we do? It's Tuesday morning, folks. And I know I know this sucks, especially since it's championship week. But if teams are playing on Sunday, we don't have any information. We just don't. I had a good question asking, and we'll talk to Armando Marsal here in about 25, 30 minutes about the waiver wire. A good question about the backfield with the Cardinals. We just have no idea. It's Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock West Coast. No idea. So thank the NFL. They really boned all of us, to be honest. All right, here we go. What are we doing today? We're doing what we normally do here on a Tuesday. I'll spend a few minutes here talking about Monday Night Football. The Packers throttled the Saints 34-0. We'll talk about that game. Some news and notes around the health of players around the league. Then we'll visit with Armando Marsal. And again, about 25 minutes, we'll talk that waiver wire with him. Trey Benson, Michael Carter, Ameer, Alexander Madison, Tyjae Spears, Olamide Zaccheaus, Marquise Brown, Xavier Hutchinson, Dalton Schultz, Chig Okonkwo. We'll talk about some of those names with Armando. You can go to FantasyGuru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. You can sign up right now. It's $50, I believe, for the rest of the season for seasonal football, wagering football, and DFS football. All three of them, one package for throughout the playoffs. You can send a note to support@fantasyguru.com, support@fantasyguru.com. You can also get your gift cards. And remember, those gift cards are still available right now. And you get signed up at FG right now with us. You get a gift card for yourself, buy it for a friend, family member. You get $10 free if you got a $25 card. If you get a $50 card, you get $15 free. If you get a $100 card, you get $25 free. If you get a $200 gift card, we give you $250. So everything you buy, you get some free money there as well. Our little thanks from us to you. Happy holidays, all of that. So head over to fantasyguru.com/product/gift-card fantasyguru.com/product/gift-card. All right, let's get into some Monday Night Football. Couple of things here. To discuss. Number one, the Packers on Monday, won this game 34-0. First shutout this season. Good work, Saints. The Packers allowed no points, obviously. They scored more than 30 points, obviously. They had 400 yards of offense. They allowed less than 200 yards of offense. They didn't have a turnover. They didn't have a fumble. They didn't have a sack. And they didn't miss a kick. Now, granted, that's a little bit of, but it's the first time that's ever happened in NFL history. Straight up, the Saints didn't show up. Everyone knew the Packers would win this game. Everyone expected them to win handily. That's not a surprise. But the Saints didn't show up. They got throttled. And, we'll start out talking there with Kendre Miller. Starting Kendre Miller last night didn't work. It was a bad call. Myself, the rankings at fantasyguru.com, we missed it. Now, I've already seen a question this morning, which is true, in the Discord over fantasyguru.com. Kendre Miller's got a much better matchup. The Saints, much better matchup this week. It's true. Kendre Miller's still a flex option this week, folks. What happened last night is they fell behind, and they basically went past crazy. And as a result, Kendre Miller actually had 8 carries for 15 yards this week. That's a 3-week low in carries. He had more carries in the 2 previous games where Alvin Kamara played. Mr. Mims, his backfield mate, turned 8 targets into 16 yards, which is pathetic. Mims had 4 carries for 16 yards. Miller had 8 carries for 15 yards. Jamal Williams had 3 carries for 8 yards. The Saints could do nothing on offense. They couldn't sustain drives. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't run the ball. It was pathetic. They're down all their players. MVS didn't play last night, chest injury, illness, all that. I get it all. The bottom line is the Mims call was bad. In retrospect, was it the wrong call? I still don't think it was the wrong call. And again, we fight this a lot in the fantasy space. We had some, and I'm going to swear here on Christmas Eve. We had an ass hat. Wasn't really swearing. Call for the firing of one of our employees because he suggested playing Kendre Miller last night. Get a grip, folks. And Jeff Mann said this best, we make at fantasyguru.com here on the show, and anyone in this fantasy space, you make calls on a weekly basis, and you're going to get right, you're going to get wrong, and you get 18 weeks. And then we get to playoffs, and we're still doing it, right? The fact is, not every call is going to be right. And, I will say it this way. If you started Kendre Miller on my advice, apologies. If you started, Kendre Miller on the rankings, apologies. If you started Kendre Miller because you cuffed him to Alvin Kamara, you did the right thing, 100%. If you're one of those people, and I know most of the people that had Kendre Miller were these people that didn't have Alvin Kamara that just randomly grabbed Kendre Miller, you did this to yourself. Handcuff your guys. You had Kamara and you played Miller, it was the right call, it didn't work. If you randomly picked up Miller off the waiver wire, it's on you, man. Take some personal responsibility for that. Continuing the discussion here with this team. Spencer Rattler is awful. 15 for 30. He was like 5.5 yards per attempt. When you're at 5.5 yards per attempt, which is like 1.5 yards below the average, you're throwing everything at the line of scrimmage, and you have a completion percentage of 50%. You suck. That's 2 games now. His completion percentage is just under 50%. And he's just not good. And again, he's a backup quarterback. I guess there's a chance Derek Carr can return from the hand injury this week. But, Carr being down, Kamara being down, MVS being down, Rashid is out, Olave didn't play. Okay, we get it. Taysom Hill was out. The Saints are destroyed offensively. We get it. But that's just a bad. You're down. You're getting smoked immediately. It's basically 21-0 before anything's really happened in this game. And you can't do anything in the air. It's just so Spencer Rattler ain't it. It's very, if Alvin Kamara was out there last night, would it have been any different? It probably would have been slightly better, but not really. They would have gotten throttled anyway. Would Kamara have played later in the second half? I don't know. But the fact is, this Saints team is terrible. And, we got Juwan Johnson, who at this point in time is really basically being producing to a draw with Foster Moreau. Foster Moreau is getting as many targets. He's running almost as many snaps. He's on the field as much. The Saints have decided that Juwan Johnson, sans Taysom Hill, needs a running mate, and it's Foster Moreau. So the hope that Juwan Johnson would have stepped forward and become a more significant piece of this offense, it's unfortunately not happened, even with Taysom Hill being out. So that team sucks. So let's go on the other side of things with the Packers. The Packers obviously won this football game. Jordan Love didn't throw for 200 yards, didn't need to. He's gone like 6 consecutive games, I believe, without throwing 30 passes. He's got like 9 touchdown passes in 8 games. They're winning games, and that's all that really matters. And he's removed the interception. I think he's gone 5 games in a row without a pick. I think I saw that earlier today. So he's playing good football, but fantasy-wise, it's tough because there's no big yardage games here. There's no huge passing attempt games here. And it's, we're hoping kind of for 230 and 2, which is usable, but it's not sexy or exciting. We saw that again last night from Jordan Love. Josh Jacobs, though, this was disappointing. Now, it's not disappointing from a fantasy perspective. He had 4 catches for 38 yards. That's 8 points. He got in the end zone. That's 6 points. We're up to 14 points. He had 70 yards rushing. He had over 20 points last night in the PPR setup. So it's not a disappointing effort. The disappointing piece is that, Wilson had a touchdown on the ground. Brooks had a touchdown on the ground. That could have easily been, if this was a more competitive game, easily could have been 3 touchdowns for Josh Jacobs, like we've seen him do multiple times here the last 5-6 weeks. So again, his effort was fantastic. He's caught 4 passes in 4 of 6 games. He's kind of the lead pass catcher at this point, which is, I know. He had a strong effort, but it could have been so much better if they didn't just give it to the backups because the game was completely out of reach. In terms of pass catchers, Jayden Reed was the leader with 3 catches for 76 yards. This team just doesn't have any success through the air. Let's just be honest about that. I've seen a lot of talk about Romeo Dobbs being one of the better pickups this week. And if he's on your waiver wire, I'm fine picking him up, but can you start him? 2 catches for 20 yards last night. The only touchdown goes to Dontavian Wicks, who caught 3 balls for 13 yards and a touchdown. Dobbs had a couple of touchdowns 2 weeks ago. He's also got a couple of touchdowns in like 7 games. Jayden Reed is, most weeks is not even getting to 40 yards receiving. Like, it's just a morass. Blech. The Packers win football games. They have a great plan. They have a great coaching staff, and they execute. So they're not an easy team to defend or play against. But in the fantasy space, they're very disappointing from a pass catching perspective. Again, we talked about the lack of volume with Jordan Love, and then, Reed and Dobbs and Wicks. Can you feel good about any of these guys? And the answer to me is no. Maybe you're going to disagree, but the answer to me is no. It's one of those scenarios where, when a team is winning this much and having this much success offensively, you'd like to say to yourself, well, yeah, of course, their number 1 wide receiver. Is Romeo Doubs their number 1 wide receiver, or is it Jayden Reed? Jayden Reed has, in his last 6 games, hit 40 yards a single time. He's hit 35 yards a single time. He's got 3 touchdowns in 9 games. Romeo Doubs, he's got those 2 touchdowns I mentioned. He had them a couple weeks ago against Seattle. But he's also got 2 touchdowns in 7 games. And in his last 5 games, he hasn't hit 55 yards receiving a single time. Then we talk about Christian Watson, who hurt his knee last night. Christian Watson just can't. He just can't, right? That guy's always in and out of the lineup. You look at his touchdown marks. His last touchdown was in week 6 or in week 17. And here's Watson's yardage total since the bye. 150, 0, 67, 114, 56, 0. So there's just not a pass catcher for this Packers team. Luke Musgrave returned last night at the tight end position before we move on for the Packers, and he only played 8 snaps, so he didn't eat into Tucker Kraft's outlook at all. Tucker Kraft went out there and had 3 catches for 63 yards. If you look at his efforts the last 6 since the bye, he's averaging 8.7 PPR points a game. Whoopie-doo. And that's with 2 touchdown catches. Like, if he didn't have the touchdown catches, it'd be much worse. In that time, he's got 2 games of 45 yards. 2 out of 6, he's hit 45 yards. Once in the 6 games, he's caught 4 passes. So it's more of the same there. Tucker Kraft is usable as a bottom-level tight end 1. I don't think the return of Musgrave changes that outlook, but just ain't very good. Just ain't very good. See, Angelo. I'll see a couple questions where I will answer. Is Diontae Johnson worth an ad? Maybe. Can't play him this week, so it doesn't matter. If you're not playing in week 18, it doesn't matter. I can't take Diontae Johnson and play him this week for the Texans. Just no idea where he's at mentally, where he's at physically. He doesn't know the offense. If you want to add him because you're playing in week 18, if you're playing in week 17, I just can't do it, Angelo. Yeah, and that was a bad game. Wasn't worth watching unless you're a Packer fan. First half you could watch, and then the second half certainly wasn't worth watching. And Angelo, you said, I guess I can throw Kendre back to the wire. I wouldn't. As I mentioned, again, it all depends. But right now we've got Kendre Miller ranked 25 at the running back position. He's a flex option this week. I would not throw Kendre Miller back to the waiver wire, Angelo. Just saying it. All right, let's talk some big picture items here in the NFL. Oh, good. Did that finally happen? Let me say that. Check this just to be sure. I've been told that the rankings finally updated. That yes, nice. Finally, they are finally updated here. Again, it's a third-party provider. It's a weird setup. They finally provided it. So now the rankings have been updated at fantasyguru.com for the matchups. So you're good to go there if you go check it out. The rankings were updated last night by Jeff, but now the matchups themselves are updated. So good to go. Good to go. Good to know. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some big story items. And, Jeff Mann's went into great detail on this. You can always catch the Elite Sports Show Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 Eastern. You can also find the show on demand at any time. And he talked about what we talked about on the show yesterday, the weirdness with the Jalen Hurts scenario. And I don't know the full details of what happened. We went over it yesterday to quickly review. He got hit on the head. He came out of the game, even though he told the ref he was fine, looked okay. The ref said, go get checked. He went in the blue tent, got checked, came out of the blue tent, put his helmet on, was ready to go back in the game. Someone said, no, you got to go to the locker room and get checked. So they sent him to the locker room. He never returned to the game. And Nick Sirianni, the head coach, said he's now in the concussion protocol. So at this point in time, there's a good chance he's activated this week and plays. There's also that chance he doesn't. We just don't know. Head injuries, you never know. They can be relative. Is there a minor head injury? No, not if you've had one. But there's a whole set of options here for what a head injury can do. Season could be over. It could be back this week. You know how this goes. If it's Kenny Pickett again, it's rough. We know that. We saw Kenny Pickett. So let's hope that, that game against the Cowboys this week, that Jalen Hurts is activated and healthy. Obviously, we should get this information well before game time. Yeah, I know, right? We'll see how this goes. By the way, are you watching the game on Wednesday? I said yesterday, don't do it. We've all commented how we're going to watch it on Thursday. If you're in the chat room right now, let me know. You're going to watch the Wednesday games? Is this going to be a new family tradition? Like we all do the Turkey Day thing, right? With football, we're going to do it with Christmas Day. Again, I'm not doing it. Let me know in the chat. All right, let's speaking of the Christmas game there, I see a question here by young native Tino. How much will the Chiefs play Juju since he's game in the stadium? I'm not really sure what since his games in the stadium. I'm not really sure what that means. How often will he play? Yeah, the game's on Netflix, Angelo. I don't anticipate him playing much. Not enough to be Juju's not going to play enough to be an option in fantasy this week. Can't be doing that, especially with the addition of Marquise Brown. They've talked about his snap count going up. They've got a myriad of weapons here that they want to kind of get all right and everything, go to the playoffs. So yeah, you just can't be using Juju Smith-Schuster this week, regardless. Let's talk about the Seahawks now. This is an interesting scenario that's unclear at this point in time. Let me do a quick reference check to see if any news is broken. Okay. No. Some updates. John Gannon was evasive when asked about James Conner's knee status. So we don't know with James Conner. We'll talk more about the waiver wire with Armando Marsal here in about 10 minutes. Aaron Rodgers, because of his knee issue, may or may not play this week. Oh, who cares? No information updated with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker was a DNP yesterday on the estimated practice report because of his ankle issue. We still haven't heard at all. We know he was being sent for tests. We talked about this yesterday on the show. So we don't know what's going on with Kenneth Walker and that ankle. This is a scenario to watch extremely closely because obviously he returned and was the lead back, relegating Charbonnet to nothingness in the offense until he was hurt late in that game. There is concern, obviously, that Walker won't be available this week. If that's the case, Charbonnet could then vault into, starting, obviously being a top 20 running back this week, provided his oblique issue is okay. We haven't heard anything with a setback with him. So our expectation at this point is that Charbonnet is okay. Kenneth Walker, we just don't know. So we'll have to watch that information very closely. today, tomorrow, all that kind of stuff as we try to get our lineup set this week. George Pickens, remember George Pickens was a game time decision. Then he missed 3 games. We talked about that with the hamstring injury here on the show multiple times. Been talking about it week after week. Well, good news. Guess what? Full participant yesterday. All right, so it certainly seems like George Pickens is back. Great news for the Steelers offense. It desperately needs that. I know some people are going the Calvin Austin route on waivers, and it's had a couple of games in a row with 4 for 65 or whatever it is. Can't be counting on Austin regardless. The return of Pickens, though, is a boost for the entire offense. Should help open the field up for the rushing attack, which Najee Harris last couple games hasn't done anything. Jaylen Warren's coming on a little bit. Jaylen Warren with the second time in his career last week, I think, of 60% of the snaps. So his role is certainly growing while Najee Harris is receding. But Pickens should be back this week against the Chiefs. They obviously desperately need him against the Chiefs. If you have Pickens, it's the Pickens experience, right? So I think if you've got Pickens, you got to start him. If he's active this week against the Chiefs, as appears likely to happen, I would not anticipate the Steelers activating him and having him on a snap count. You never know. Not my assumption, though. Pickens is got to be, 3 wide receiver league. There's no way you're not starting him unless you are one of these people. And there are some that have 4 top 15 wide receivers. So George Pickens trending toward playing. We had the comment earlier about Diontae Johnson. Yeah, he was claimed from the waivers by the Texans, from the Ravens, by the Texans. And he obviously will try to replace Tank Dell as they, try to do things here down the stretch and into the playoffs. The fact is that Diontae Johnson, as I said earlier, I don't know where his head is at. We haven't seen him on the field for a long time. I don't know where he's at physically. Adding him this week, again, if you're playing in week 18, okay, you just can't. Now he would love to be out there and play the Ravens, tomorrow. But remember, it's a short week too. So it's impossible to play Diontae Johnson. It's impossible to pick him up if your league is done this week. But he'll obviously give the Texans some intel on the Ravens. And, that's kind of why the Ravens got him earlier, right? Their hope was that they'd have some intel maybe on the Steelers. We'll see if Diontae Johnson's able to do anything on the field this season before it's over. Now, Jalen Waddle, who didn't play last week, update from Mike McDaniel yesterday. Mike McDaniel basically said, that's coach speak for I don't know. Basically said they didn't know what was going to happen with Jalen Waddle. So at this point in time, I'm not at all confident that Jalen Waddle is going to return to action this week. Excuse me. If that's the case, obviously Malik Washington yet again would be the guy. We talked yesterday about the trials and trails of Tyreek Hill and how he simply can't get anything done this season. Doesn't look great right now that he's going to have his running mate Jalen Waddle back on the field through that knee injury. We'll see. Doesn't look great right now. This one was a little surprising. Not shocking, but a little surprising. Jim Harbaugh said that the Chargers are designating J.K. Dobbins to return from his knee injury. The 21-day window has been opened. So that means that they have obviously 3 weeks. There's only 2 weeks left in the season to activate J.K. Dobbins. This is not good. If you have Gus Edwards after the 2-touchdown game and you're thinking about rolling him out there, there's a possibility. I don't know how big. And again, this is we only have a little bit of information, so it's very hard to know. There's a possibility that J.K. Dobbins is active this week. And if J.K. Dobbins is active this week, I don't know how you'd play any Charger running back because I can't expect Dobbins to return and get 17 touches. I certainly wouldn't want to play Gus Edwards if Dobbins is back. I think he erases Gus Edwards from usability. So this is a dicey scenario. So, even if I'll say it this way, and we talked about this earlier, Edwards had the 2 rushing touchdowns, but weren't like 43 of his 68 yards like on 1 carry. Yeah, like 13 carries for 25 yards and 2 touchdowns, if I remember. I think that's what it was, 13, 25, and 2. So you take away the 43-yard run. You're not starting Gus Edwards anyway. Come on. But yeah, the J.K. Dobbins thing, if he's on the waiver wire, you want to block an opponent, even if you don't want to use him yourself, he's at least in play. I don't think we should be doing that at this point in time, but he's in play potentially this week, which is rather surprising. Drew Lock is getting an MRI on his shoulder. We still don't know who's going to start for the Giants. It doesn't matter. They all suck. Daniel Jones, DeVito, Boyle, Lock, they all suck. They're all terrible. The offense is awful. Jeff Manns was talking about yesterday. The Giants are putting forth no effort. They're getting stomped out by opponents right now. They just want the season to be over. No matter who's the quarterback, as we talked about earlier this week, yesterday. It is only Tuesday. We talked about yesterday. Like, you're still starting Malik Neighbors. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Malik Neighbors is the offense. But yeah, we don't know who the quarterback is going to be throwing him the ball this week. The Browns have committed to Dorian Thompson-Robinson as their starter this week, if healthy. He's got a calf issue. Okay, we talked about him yesterday. The offense predictably went in the toilet. DTR didn't do anything. Wasn't helped out by the Donta Foreman fumble at the goal line, but he didn't do anything. Hurt his calf. Jameis Winston's got a shoulder injury, though. Now, it wasn't directly said, but reading between the lines, Stefanski did not say that if DTR is out, that the starter is actually going to be Jameis Winston. So it might be Bailey Zappi this week. So, oof. So, as we've discussed yesterday, right now it's Njoku, who we'll talk about in a second. Njoku and Ford kind of being it in this offense that you'd want to even consider starting from the Browns here in championship week. And even those two guys, Ford's, we don't know what the quarterback is going to be. We don't know what the offense is going to look like because the offense will be different, whether it's Zappi or Winston or DTR. They will run a different offense, right? And then the situation with David Njoku is, he had the hamstring injury that cost him time. And he came back and his snap share was down in his first game back. Still extremely productive. He caught 8 balls. Still extremely productive, but he wasn't on the field as much. We kind of thought, well, they're just slowly getting him back in the offense. Well, maybe that was part of it, but we also learned that he suffered a knee injury. And at this point in time, hamstring and knee, both for David Njoku, are bothering him. At this point in time, again, we don't know who the starting quarterback is. We don't know what the offense is going to look like. And we don't know if David Njoku is going to play. Jordan Akins would be the obvious pivot. He's been the guy that's been around. If you're playing in week 17 and you're thinking Jordan Akins is your guy, you're not winning your fantasy championship. We just can't be doing that. So be very, very cautious here. Even with David Njoku, we need more information before we can make those determinations with him. But right now, really dicey on whether or not he's going to be active this week for the Browns. So that's kind of a run through of Monday Night Football, the snooze fest where the Packers dominated. That's kind of a run through of some of the bigger storylines to remember. As we said just a few minutes ago, it's uncertain, according to Ian Rappaport, whether Aaron Rodgers will play. He was rolled up on last week, hurt his leg, so it's uncertain whether he will play. Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon didn't answer questions about is James Conner going to play, and not just James Conner going to play. We don't know if Trey Benson's going to play, so we'll talk in a few moments here to Armando Marsal on what he thinks about this backfield. Alec Pierce is still in the concussion protocol, so not clear if he's going to be able to play this week for the Colts. And the Jets, by the way, signed Greg Joseph, so it sounds like the Jets are going to have, is that their 4th kicker this year? 5th kicker this year? Like, how many kickers do the Jets have? I don't know. A lot. But we're going to get Greg Joseph, it looks like, this week, as Anders Carlson, who is not good, will no longer be kicking for the Jets. Before we talk to Armando Marsal, remember, 2 ways. Join us at fantasyguru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Get signed up. Send a note to support@fantasyguru.com. Support@fantasyguru.com. You can get the seasonal, the wagering, the DFS, all 3 of those packages in one. And you can also get those gift cards. There's still time, folks. Still got the holiday season. Let's go. You can do it quick. Buy it, print it out. You're good to go. You have it, stick it in the envelope, stick it in the stocking, wrap it up in a box, try to fool someone, put it in a big old box, little tiny thing. fantasyguru.com/product/gift-card. fantasyguru.com/product/gift-card. Okay. There we go. It's a Tuesday. I know the schedule's all jacked up this week because the NFL's doing their NFLing things here in championship week. Terrible timing. I've got to talk. If you ever thought to yourself the NFL doesn't care about fantasy football, I think this week pretty much proves they don't. But anyway, we care about fantasy football at fantasyguru.com and here on Fantasy Sports Daily. So we're bringing in our man, Armando Marsal. He comes in every Tuesday. We take your comments and questions. We talk waiver wire. We just have some fun with Armando. Let's bring him in now. Armando Marsal at fantasyguru.com. How you doing, Armando?
I'm doing good, Ray. How about yourself?
Doing good. I'm confused what day it is of the week. This is all I'm talking Monday Night Football 20 minutes ago, and then I forgot what day it was because I'm talking about game act. Isn't this, am I going too far when I say the NFL doesn't care? Again, I don't think they care about competitive balance because these teams, some teams are playing 3 games in 11 days. I don't think they care about the players because they're playing 3 games in 11 days. And then they don't care about fantasy football at all. It's like 50 million people play fantasy football, and they're just going to play every day of the week to screw this whole thing up. What do you think? Does the NFL not care about us?
It's the week they choose to do it, right? Like, that's the icing on the cake. Like, that's just like, what are we doing here? Like, it's the week they choose to do it. It's ludicrous. When you look at, you see 2 games Wednesday, then you got a Thursday game. Then guess what? We got 3 games Saturday. Then we got some Sunday games. Then we got Monday. Look, as a fan, right? Like, if you enjoy watching football and you have nothing else to do and you could sit down and watch all this, sure. And I think that's the main reason why they do it. But like you said, they do not care about fantasy football whatsoever. And then they also, like, some of these teams now have shorter weeks because of that, right? And some of these teams are playing for something. You're not getting time to rest up. Yeah. Others are. So I do think it kind of unbalances things in the NFL, and it is a disadvantage to some of these teams that are playing more games within a shorter window. And it's, I think, a crucial time to do that, right? Because I think the more rest I was listening to you now talk about all the injuries going on around the league. Like, some of these teams need that extra day or two, believe it or not. It's a lot. It means a lot to these teams. So I don't like it from that perspective. I do enjoy having football on TV every day, of course, but outside of that, there's not that much of an advantage to have so many games.
Armando Marsal at fantasyguru.com. Armando's nice enough to join us here on Christmas Eve. I assume you're out tomorrow. Are you going to be doing anything tomorrow? I explained my schedule to the people. What's your schedule looking like this week so they know? Yeah,
so I'll be posting. We'll have a write-up for the 2-game slate tomorrow, so I'll be posting that a little later this afternoon. Tomorrow, no promises, but maybe while the kids are getting ready and stuff, might jump in Discord if anyone has any questions. No guarantees, no promises. If I do, it'll be very short, very quick. And then Thursday, the usual. We are our staff picks that should be up by this afternoon as well, since we have games on Wednesday. So I'm trying to get that up for you guys by no later than this afternoon, or worst case scenario, first thing in the morning tomorrow. But definitely before the games. And then we'll have a 3-game Saturday breakdown, and the podcast, I'll be posting it on Friday this week instead of Thursday, and then everything else, Sunday live stream, everything will be on schedule as usual.
You can obviously watch this show live on Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, on YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. Leave those comments and questions that Armando and I will get to. You can watch us live on live on Twitter X @FantasyGuru site. You can find this show if you go to FantasyGuru.com, click the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page at Fantasy Guru. It takes you to the section where we have Jeff Mann's podcast, Justin Fensterman's podcast, this show, also Armando Marsal's Mind of Marsal. So click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can find that. And you can obviously type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network and take us on the go with you, or just listen without seeing Armando in my face, which might be a benefit. I don't know. Maybe it's worse. Maybe it's better.
That sweater. I mean, I looked. I was like, I think I have one, but I don't. I have to get one. I need a Christmas sweater. I don't
the color. You got red though.
Yeah, well, but this was purposely done. Okay, this was purposely done.
All right, I like it, Armando. Let's talk some football here. I already got the questions this morning, and it's the right question, but we're going to talk some waivers here with you. We don't know if James Conner is going to play. Gannon just spoke to the media and basically was like, we don't know if Benson's going to play. I mean, this is the killer, right? Like, Conner goes down if he's not playing. You got Benson as the handcuff. Now we don't know if the handcuff is playing. It's just the worst scenario. The 2 names are I guess, Carter and DJ Dallas. So walk us through this backfield scenario. I guess if Conner is out, it's Benson if he's active. Is the next guy Carter with Dallas third? Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think I would be so let's assume here that Benson and Conner do not play here. I agree with you. I think if Conner's out and Benson's in, Benson's their guy. I think Carter would be the man behind him. But if both Benson and Conner are out, I think it's going to be Carter. I think he's the next man up. I think, they obviously leaned on him this week. He got 10 opportunities there, was involved in the passing game, 5 targets, 5 rush attempts. So, kind of doing a little bit of everything there for them. I think they'll continue to lean on him. I think if he does start, with Benson, and let's assume Benson and Conner, I think you could see 15 opportunities for someone like Carter here. Good matchup against the Rams. They are middling, not great matchup, but middling matchup here against the Rams. I do think it should be a competitive game here. So I do think he'll, get plenty of opportunities. But this is what, with the waivers this week, I wanted to say this, before, that way there's no redundancy. Just be mindful, of who you have, and is it worth going out and getting these players to play them? I think in this situation, yes, you get this. You kind of lock this backfield in because I think you can pencil in either Benson, if you don't already have him, or Carter, whoever starts there for about 15 opportunities. And if you're hurting at the position, you saw Kendre Miller didn't pan out for some. If you don't want to trust him again next week and you want to go in a different direction, maybe this is the direction you want to go in. So, and not only that, you're also taking away 15 opportunities from your opponent. And most people are going into the championship. I've lost a ton of running backs in my leagues. I'm like kind of looking through the waivers now and doing the same thing in my championship. So if you're in that kind of situation, these are kind of running backs that can help you. But outside of that, you don't have to add and plug and play these guys. Don't chase last week performances for any of these guys that we're going to talk about here today.
There's a comment here by Angelo, speaking of the Cardinals, saying that Jonathan Gannon said that they're not going to rest Kyler Murray the final 2 weeks of the season. And Angelo asked, do we trust this guy? I think it's really, to me, I mean, the Cardinals stink, if we're being honest. And Kyler Murray, we're 5 years or whatever into this. He's the same guy he's always been. There's been no improvement there. I think they need to play him. I mean, I don't know why they would sit him. I mean, to me, you got to go into the postseason or the offseason with some kind of positivity. I believe the report here, and I think that the worries about teams sitting players are really exaggerated. It doesn't happen as much, I think, as most people think, Armando.
I agree 100% with you. Like, I think that even if it's a lost season, what do you get? What's the benefit of not playing him aside from him not getting hurt? But that can happen in week 2. That can happen in week 3. Like that, you're taking that same kind of risk. You need to continue to evaluate these players because at some point, these teams are going to have to make a decision. Like, are we going to cut our losses, or are we going to, continue to build on him and build off him and build up? And I think that you have to play quarterbacks. And I kind of said the same thing with Will Levis. Like, I understand it's been miserable, but so this next year there should be no conversation about him being in the starting lineup if you're the Titans, right? Like, if you're doing this and you're taking him out at the end of the season. So I think it really depends on what your direction is with the player. I agree with you. I think sometimes this gets overblown where, oh my God, everyone's going to, I think only in that final week, if you've clinched the playoffs, sitting your starters, or if you've clinched a specific, sitting your starters, okay, at that point, because you don't want to risk further injury or any injuries, but if you don't have anything to play for, why not? Why not?
You mentioned waivers, by the way. I got a note, the FSGA league that I'm in, I got a note that because again, not everyone runs waivers Tuesday night. Some leagues run waivers Wednesday night. Yeah. And so they're manually overriding the waiver system and everything, having to do it, do the website. And there's going to be a 50-minute window. So the waivers are going to run, they're going to hit in, 12 in the morning or whatever, and the game's at 9:30 or whatever the hell it is, right? 10 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast. Everyone needs to make sure that their waivers run. That's another thing the NFL doesn't, they screw the whole schedule up. They don't care. Make sure your waivers run and that your commissioner is aware of this, because Armando, there could be some people that, you know what I mean? It's like you could end up in the finals without being able to get a waiver run through.
It's awful. It's really awful. You have to pay very close attention to everything, because this is a wild week. Like I look at things from a week to week. That's how I look fantasy football. That's how I view fantasy football. I realized how funky this week's schedule was 2 weeks ago. Like I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be such an awful week of football. But like when you're covering it and when you're, and when you're preparing for it, and then a lot of people are not going to be around their phones setting lineups and stuff tomorrow. Like that's the last thing a lot of people want to be doing. Right. It's funky. It is funky. I guess that's the only way to say it.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. And one other thing before we continue on with the waiver wire talk. I talked Kendre Miller early in the show and broke it all down. And we had a question in Discord this morning about him already. And someone's like, I'm considering playing him. I'm like, look, he's a flex option this week. The matchup's better this week. What happened last night, it happened, but it can't be that bad again. Someone in the Angelo in the chat says, I'm going to drop Kendre Miller. You dropping Kendre Miller at this point? You're holding on to him. Would you consider playing him this week? It's early, but what are your thoughts?
Really depends on your options. I agree with you. I think a flex option, a flex play, for at the running back position. Like, I feel like we got the absolute floor from him. Like, that's really what I think we got from him. And I think we're reacting based on just yesterday's performance. Look, that was enough. At the end of the day, Rattler was terrible. All right. They were unable to move the ball. But Packers got onto an early lead. The two teams are going in very different directions. We have to understand that as well, right? When it comes to the Saints and the Packers right now, this is a Saints that's dealing with so many injuries. The opportunities are going to be there for Miller this upcoming week. We're assuming Kamara continues to stay out and stuff like that. I'm not going to drop him, number one. Number two, if you don't want to start him, sure, but dropping him just for the sake of dropping, that doesn't make sense. Like, your opponent might need the running back, your opponent might need a flex play, and it might come to haunt you. You might not trust him, but don't cut him. I'm okay with playing him in the flex. I don't hold grudges with fantasy players. I move on to the following week. I trust the process. I understand that the results were not there, but I do accept the process. I do understand that the process was right. It was just the results were not there, and that's going to happen in a game of chance, in any game of chance, really. So we just have to understand that it was just an outlier situation here, I think, for Miller. I think a much better week is in order this upcoming week.
Armando, what about the situation in the backfield with the Raiders? Madison and Abdullah, like the last couple of weeks, Abdullah's numbers kind of pops. He's catching these passes and everything like that. But if you look at yesterday or Sunday, as an example, Madison played more snaps. He was on the field more. He touched the ball more. Like, he's the goal line back. Like, if you're looking at the points, it's Ameer Abdullah. If you're looking at the role, it's really Madison. Talk us through the Raiders backfield and if you have any interest this week.
This is one of those situations where I leave on waivers, right? Like, I just leave them out there unless I'm absolutely in major need. I'm going to let my opponent make this decision. I'm going to let my opponent make this mistake because I don't want to be invested in the Raiders backfield. I don't want to count on the Raiders backfield in my finals or my championship game. So I think we're going to see a committee where Madison is the favorite of the two in the committee. Maybe he gets that 55, 60% of those opportunities compared to 40 of Abdullah. That's where I stay with this backfield. But this is one of those instances where I say, you know what, unless I absolutely need to invest, I'd rather let my opponent make that mistake. And I feel like if you leave them out there, they're going to be tempted. You never know. They might flex them, might turn out to be a bad game, and there you go. So, but if I have to choose one of the two, it is Madison for me.
Marsal at fantasyguru.com. The Titans backfield, most of the season, Pollard's been really good. We've all been a little concerned about him wearing down, and it's, is he wearing down? Is he just hurt? Both, whatever it is. Spears the last couple of weeks has started to take on a bigger role. It's not just about scoring touchdowns. He's starting to take on a bigger role. And I think that touchdown piece for me is the thing that really pops, is they're using him at the goal line now. So I don't know if they just look at Pollard and think he's got no juice left or what have you. But Spears obviously has to be taken seriously. If he's still on the waiver wire, and he probably isn't because he scored a couple of touchdowns 2 weeks ago. But if he is, he's an addition. How does he kind of fall into the mix for you this week? Are we starting him with confidence? Is it still, well, Pollard's out there and who knows? What do you think about Tyjae Spears?
So we know Pollard is playing through an injury, right? Like, he was kind of heading into this week with a questionable tag throughout the week. Didn't practice earlier in the week, and he played through the injury. Then this game became a massive blowout. The coach just completely blew them out here. So I think that changed the dynamics. But like you said, look, Spears has now scored 2 touchdowns in each of his last 2 games. He's had at least 11 opportunities. I think given where they're at, given what we've seen this team do, Spears at worst is going to get 10 to 12 opportunities on the week-to-week basis in a competitive game environment. I think they play the Jaguars this week, so it should be a closer game. Both of these teams are going in the same direction, which is a negative direction. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Spears get the 10 to 12 opportunities. He is getting valuable touches, like you mentioned, inside the 20-yard line. So if he's out there, he would be the priority for me. And I think you could make a strong case of him being a very solid flex play this week, especially on a running back needy team or a team that's just, obliterated with injuries. Like we've seen the last couple of weeks, a lot of players go down. So yeah, I think if he's out there, he should be a priority ad over anyone that we're talking about on this show. I know everyone we're going to talk about. So over any position, anyone we've talked about on this show.
What about Olamide Zaccheaus, who we can't even say his name, certainly can't spell his name?
I'm going to let you say that
okay.
one.
Just call OZ.
OZ, yeah.
The wide receiver for the Commanders. When you have your quarterback throw for 5 touchdowns, things happen. And it's remarkable that Jameis and Crowder scoring a couple touchdowns too. Like, this was just one of those games, kind of, right? But Brown is injured. There really isn't a second wide receiver on this team. De'Ami Brown. Is it OZ? Like, are you taking that risk? Are we being a hero here? To me, it's insanity to consider starting OZ. But I know people are going to look at the production last week and want to add him.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm simply not. This is one of those scenarios where we talked a little bit about earlier where unless I need a player, like I'm in an emergency situation, I'm in a bind. Let's say I've lost receiver after receiver after receiver, and I was starting Tank Dell, and now I lost him too. Like, if you're in that kind of position in a 16-team league, okay, we're talking OZ now. But in most 10-team leagues, 12-team leagues, you can find other options, I think, with safer floors that you can rely on if you really need a receiver. But no, I wouldn't. I would actually do the same thing with like what I'm doing with the Raiders backfield, where it's like, let someone else make that decision. Let my opponent make that decision and take that risk. And if it works out for them, great. But I would say not a big percentage of the time it won't.
Marquise Brown returned and played like 4 snaps and had like 18 targets. It was a really weird scenario where like, what is it, like 20 snaps and he had like 8 targets. He was like, they gave him the full treatment. And I don't think anyone in their right mind should have been starting Marquise Brown last week. We're in a new week here, though. It's a short week. We're obviously, though, going to get Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this Chiefs offense, and it's not always consistent on a weekly basis. Did you see enough out of Marquise Brown last week to A, add him with confidence, and B, consider starting him this week?
You want to add him, sure, but I wouldn't be starting him. No, I wouldn't want to start him. I wish this would have happened like in week, 4 or 5, because now we're all excited. Now it's like, all right, there's something to look forward to. A lot of these players, what you could do is, if you really want to invest in maybe DFS, right? Like maybe play DFS. You go with a player that's cheap and got a roll last week if you want to chase that, but I wouldn't want to start any of these players in my championship game. I think you're just taking on way too much risk here. So no, I would be avoiding him in my starting lineup in seasonal. And if you want to add him for the sake of adding him, sure.
Same thing with Xavier Hutchinson. I mean, because I know that Diontae Johnson was added this week by the Texans because the loss of Tank Dell, but he's going to have 2 days with the team. Like, there's no chance he's. I don't even think he's even active, right? So Hutchinson seems like the guy. Is this just a scenario where we should expect 15 targets to Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz is the number 2 wide receiver? Kind of the same scenario as with Marquise Brown?
Yeah, I would say yes when it comes to. Remember, Mechie was dinged up last game and he didn't play. I think if you want, you see in a PPR format, I think if you want someone here, Woods. I'm thinking, I wish Diggs was back, right? Yeah. Woods, someone that I think you can maybe, get 4 to 5 targets, pretty, safe targets. So maybe he sees a little bit of an opportunity. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be all day Collins. I think we're going to see Schultz more involved. I think Schultz had 8 targets last game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he had 8 targets. So yeah, I think it's going to be Schultz, Collins, and then I think Woods. Yeah, he could be that guy that gives you 4 to 5 targets, and I think they're maybe six fantasy points in PPR settings. If you're looking for something like that, I think he's someone you can look at.
Yeah, Schultz, I think, has got 5 catches in 3 of 5 games. Right?
Yes.
The thing with the Texans offense is just ground to a halt. Like, Mixon's not been as effective of late. Stroud can't throw for 250 yards ever. Never happens. I think he has 1 game this year where he's like at 250 and 2, which is kind of the baseline that we really want to see from a guy that doesn't run. I think he's done it once all year. Like, oof. I mean, I was looking at some of his numbers. He hasn't taken any step this year. Now, again, all his receivers have been hurt. The offensive line hasn't been very good. But that offense is, even Nico Collins, we're starting Nico Collins this week, but I got some concern because it's like, as a defense, who the hell is going to beat us besides Nico Collins?
Yeah, the matchup is so good. But yes, I agree. Like, you can game plan for the Texans pretty easily, I think, if you're a defense coordinator in the NFL. I know where the ball's going. I'm far from a defensive coordinator. All right, so I know these guys are looking at this film over and over and over again. They're like, all right, this is what we do. So, I mean, he might be triple covered this game when you think about it, right? Like, they're probably going to have 2 on him and someone deep. It's going to leave a lot of things underneath open. I think that's why I think Schultz and Woods are too interesting. I think Schultz, so if you've been streaming the position and you've been kind of like just, going every week, each and every week, and Schultz is out there, I definitely think he's an ad, and I'm okay with rolling him out in your finals. Like, I'm totally fine with that if you need help at the position. Now, look, let's not overcomplicate this, all right? If we have Brock Bowers, we're not going to go and pick up Schultz right, to start over Bowers or Kelsey or any of those guys. So just
or even Trey McBride.
Please, exactly, correct. Like we're not doing that here this week. Okay, there's no need to get cute. It's just a matter of if you're dealing with injuries or you've been streaming the position, he's a viable streaming option. That's where we are with Schultz here this week. But yeah, I do think he's going to benefit greatly from this.
Finally, let's talk about the Titans tight end. Chig Okonkwo has been kind of on a breakout list for most people for a couple years. And there's always a player or two or a game or two where you see it and you look at the Titans offense and you're like, why isn't this guy more of a part of the offense? Like NWI, all he does is catch touchdowns. He doesn't do anything. And they've got Ridley running fly routes. Why isn't Okonkwo just soaking up targets? And he just hasn't. The first 13 games he played this year, he averaged 2 catches for 23 yards. 13 games on every single waiver wire in the world. Even the biggest Chig Okonkwo fan on the waiver wire. Week 15, 8 catches for 59 yards. Week 16, 9 catches for 81 yards. 21 targets in 2 games, Armando. 21. This guy, the first 13 weeks, averaged 3 a game. So he's more than tripled that. 2 weeks in a row. Not 1. 2 weeks in a row now. Are we taking him seriously in this matchup here against the Jaguars? Jaguars are terrible. What are we doing with Chig Okonkwo?
It's tough to ignore 21 targets in 2 weeks, right? It really is. You have to put into perspective the game scripts. But so I pulled it up because I wanted to be precise here. He had 38 targets in the first 13 weeks of football. 21 the last 2 games. It's insane.
Absolutely.
Can we trust it? Remember, there's been a quarterback change.
There has.
They're playing from behind.
Yep.
So I do think you pay attention to this. I think you could trust this. Just understand the same thing we say with a lot of these tight ends, right? There is always going to be the volatility. There's always going to be that unsafe floor. So if you're looking for a player with upside, if you're looking for a player that has been very involved, if you're looking at recent trends, he makes a lot of sense here this week. We can always go back to that 3 target a game, right? Like we've seen that. It's happened in a large percentage. But again, I don't think that's going to happen here. I don't see them in a position where they're going to just run over the Jaguars and they're going to have to, lean on the run here. It's going to be a competitive game environment. We're seeing them lean a lot on him lately. So yeah, I think those targets are real. I think they're here to stay. It's a bad defense. I know they're playing the Jaguars, but it's a bad defense. So they could be chasing points in this one. So yeah, I think if you're in a bind or if you're in a tight end premium league and you're looking for, flex play, you're hurting, it could be worse than Okonkwo here, I think.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com. Armando, last time when Mike Tyson had his fight with Jake Paul or whatever, there was all kinds of problems with Netflix, people getting timed out and all that kind of stuff. Games tomorrow on Christmas are on Netflix. The average person, I guess most people have Netflix at this point. I guess. But another example by the NFL not caring about the fans really because it's on Netflix. I heard that the Beyonce halftime show is going to be on Netflix for like 3 hours after the game or something. I don't know if you want to check that out. What are the odds that the game goes smoothly in terms of the production tomorrow? Is Netflix going to have a problem when they get their servers crashed by everyone watching this football game?
My sources are telling me this minus 250 that there will be some issues. No, I'm just kidding. I just made that line up, but I do think that there are going to be some issues at some point. But I hope, and I'm hopeful, being that it's going to be a Christmas Day and everyone's going to be happy and stuff. That it's not that much, right? It's not that much. I hope it's not as bad as it was that evening with that Paul fight. That Paul Tyson fight. That was unwatchable because of that. I'll be honest. So, yeah, I hope that they do fix it. But yeah, I'm expecting at least one hiccup throughout the day.
By the way, some breaking news here. Drew Lock will start this week for the Giants.
Hopefully you're not. Hopefully, we're hoping that you've gone this far without counting or relying on Drew Lock, and we hope that it stays the same the rest of the season. But yeah.
I made the semifinals in the Man's League, and I used Drew Lock 1 week. I had to do it. It's a super flex league,
that league, it's my team. That ship sunk for me a long time ago. I've tried, but every time I get up, I fall down again. Still getting up though, guys. Still getting up.
There you go. Got to keep getting up. Got to keep fighting. Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com joins us every Tuesday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Nice enough to join us here, as well as all of you on Christmas Eve. Armando, thanks for your time today. We'll see you again next week. I assume we'll still do waivers next week. Maybe we'll change it up. I don't know. What percentage of people you think play week 18? It seems like no one does. Everyone's soft. They don't play week 18. At least play week 18 DFS. Remember, go to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe tab in the top right corner. You can get the seasonal DFS and wagering, all three together. Support at fantasyguru.com. At least play DFS in week 18 or play some bets or something like that. But what percentage of seasonal players do you think are actually active in week 18?
I'd say a low percentage. I'd say it's under 30%. Well, we could actually put a poll if you want in Discord and engage it. If not, we could talk some DFS or we could talk whatever you want, Ray.
Oh, okay.
New Year's resolutions, whatever you want.
We got 7 days to figure this out, baby. Let's go.
Exactly.
Actually, what day is New Year's next week?
We're actually on the 31st again. We're rocking these holidays. We're rocking the holidays.
Yeah, wow, look at this.
Maybe I don't know. We'll have some mimosas on the show.
Okay, you can wear your tux too. If you got one of those, do you have a tux?
It doesn't actually. Yes, I have a suit, but it doesn't fit me anymore. I actually go get it tailored since I've lost a lot of weight. I barely go out to anything fancy. So I tried it. I tried it on the other day. I was like, all right, I look like. Have you seen the movie Big? Like, you know how he has that big? Yeah, there you go. I look like Tom Hanks in Big.
Well, at least you're going in that direction. It's not too tight because you gain weight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Again, he's with us every Tuesday. You heard earlier in his visit all the things he's doing the next couple of days. He'll be in Discord toward the weekend, DFS, all that stuff, seasonal. You see him here all the time. So, Armando, thanks for your time. And you said your Mind of Marsal podcast is coming out Friday?
Yeah, Friday this week. Instead of Thursday, it'll be Friday this week.
Okay. Remember, click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page at fantasyguru.com to find this show and Armando's show every week. Armando, thanks for your time. Merry Christmas to you and the family, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays, and we will see you guys next week.
He's Armando Marsal. I'm Ray Flowers. Thanks for watching Fantasy Sports Daily. Happy holidays to everybody. We'll be back here on Thursday. No show tomorrow. We'll be back on Thursday for Fantasy Sports Daily at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, powered by fantasyguru.com. Happy holidays.